You've got to punch your ticket and pay the price. So discipline is not a bad thing. You're not crazy to work to be self-disciplined, because that's what gets you to this higher level, and also gets you to just live your life so that when the day is over, you're calm.
So I was thinking about put your ass where your heart wants to be, because the other day I was feeling like sick. I wasn't feeling super well. And I felt like I had every excuse not to sit down and write, but I sort of gutted it out anyway. And it was one of the best writing days that I'd had in a long time. And I think about that tension because I think people think that writers sort of, one, always want to do it. That's always fun. That it always comes easily. But a lot of it, I think that the thing that makes it work is the days that you show up that you don't want to.
There's a lot to that, Ryan. And I think it's true for the gym too. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you're a runner, right?
Sure.
Those days when you think, oh my God, I can't stand this, one more minute, sometimes I don't know why that is. Do you have any idea why that is?
No, I don't. It's like you get whatever that point, it's not fun at first, but you push, there's some level or barrier that you break through.
Maybe on those, I'm just thinking as we're talking, maybe on those days when there's like a head of steam built up and you don't know it, there's heavier resistance against that, trying to stop that good stuff from coming out. That could be it. I bet that is it.
Yeah.
So if it's easy, don't do it.
Well, and if you could do a good project by only showing up on the days when you felt like showing up,
you'd never show up at all.
Everyone would do it.
Yeah,
right.
That's true.
Right. It's the difference maker is, did you show up on the days when it was hot, when you were tired, when you weren't feeling it? That's they say what separates the boys from the girls, which we wouldn't say anymore. Now it's the amateurs from the professionals.
True,
right?
Exactly.
Did you show up even when you didn't want to?
Yeah.
Although the irony is, a professional shows up because they're getting paid. An amateur shows up because they want to, right? There is some interesting tension in those.
Although I sort of think of, when I think of myself I thought of myself as a professional long before there was any money coming in.
Sure.
And I think that's the way. I never show up because I think I'm going to get paid. Do you? I mean,
No.
I just show up out of kind of a general, I don't know if pride is the right word, but, just if I didn't, I would hate myself and I couldn't sleep that night, Well,
I think that is the tricky part about writing too, in a lot of professions, which is if you're a salesperson, you show up today, you make your sale, you get paid or whatever. But as a writer, the contribution of one day or 1 hour or 1 month, it's really not possible to quantify, to put a number on it. So it's easy to cheat yourself or to cheat the thing, because you don't, I think about this when I say yes to stuff that is cool. It's there's no way to quantify oh, hey, I've been neglecting my work by 10% or 20% or 30%, because there isn't the direct correlation between effort, output. It's the publishable output is a lagging indicator of the day-to-dayness of the thing.
Yeah, but then the other part of that is, if you miss a day, the next day is that much harder,
Yep.
And you're falling a little bit behind. I wanted to ask you, how do you, in your own mind, decide when non-writing stuff is worthy of your time? How do you separate, how do you compartmentalize the two? Because I'm sort of wrestling a little bit with that myself.
Well, I think it's hard. And I think the pandemic, to go to what we were just saying, the pandemic was very illustrative to me, because suddenly all the non-writing stuff more or less disappeared. And then I still had a book that I was writing. This is when I was writing Courage. And I felt like I was so much more locked in on that book. And I feel like it was, I don't want to say better, but it was illustrative to me. Oh, this is what the opportunity costs of all the things I've said yes to is.
So how do you decide when to say yes and when to say no?
Well, I think a big part of it is do I actually want to do it or not? I think realizing that a lot of the stuff I don't want to do at all, and I'm just not going to do it, right? I remember I was working at American Apparel after I'd written this obstacle had come out. I think I was working at Ego. This is when the company was like in turnaround. And I remember getting like a ping on my watch that I had like a staff meeting to get to or something. And I remember thinking, I've written 3 like best-selling books. How many people would kill to be able to be a full-time writer and could financially be a full-time writer, which I could have been at that time. And here I am rushing to a staff meeting because I can't just fully be pro at that thing. And so a lot of it is just like the professional stuff that I do that's not writing is often stuff that I like doing or I think is complementary to the writing. But it's hard. And then the third variable is obviously family too, right? Like I have young kids. So when I'm saying yes to this stuff, I'm traveling and going places like I got invited to the Super Bowl, like by one of the teams in the Super Bowl. And it was like, this would be really cool. But a weekend away meant a disruption of my writing routine. And it also meant like a weekend away from my kids. And I was like, I'm not going to. So I say no to a lot of stuff. I say yes to a lot of stuff, but I say no to a lot of stuff because I do have some sense of the opportunity cost. But what I think was illustrative about the pandemic was suddenly you couldn't say yes to stuff and you realized you didn't miss it when it wasn't there.
Yeah. I mean, the pandemic really didn't affect me that much, didn't change my life that much because my life was already sort of a pandemic type of life.
Yes.
But my experience, was a little bit the opposite of yours. Like in my early years of writing, when I wasn't making any money and there was no such thing as the internet and everything. I mean, I look back on that nostalgically now where I was like, committed. I mean, hours and hours and hours a day and really deeply into it. And it's only since like, social media and stuff you're to blame for like turning me on to some of that stuff, but you do have to promote yourself, right? Yes. That's part of it. And I have problems with that, and it's stuff that has to be done. There's no doubt about it. And it is fun, but it's a tough choice between yes and no sometimes, because when you say yes to promoting something or even being out there, you're saying no to actually doing the work.
Epictetus said that philosophy wasn't this dry, abstract thing. It was a thing, he said, you should be talking about, writing down, reading about, exploring with other people all the time. He said, constantly have it at hand. That's how I think about philosophy. And it's weird. For the last 5 years, every single day, I've been writing this free email about Stoic philosophy. It's been not just cool to meet all these fellow practitioners of Stoic philosophy, but in writing about it, talking about it, reading it for our podcast, I have got to internalize these ideas in a way that I never would have been able to under any other circumstances. That's the idea. Philosophy is something we're supposed to engage in, not keep in these dusty old books or read once and be done with. It's a constant process. And I think that's why the email has worked so well for the people reading about it and sharing it and talking about it, all of that as well. So I'd love to have you join us on this email. You can sign up at dailystoic.com/daily email. It's totally free, no spam. You can unsubscribe whenever you want. I've basically given away a book for free every single year for 5 years, and I'm going to keep on doing it until I drop dead. Check it out, dailystoic.com/daily email. Although I guess I would have a slightly more expansive definition of what the work is, right?
I want to hear this, yeah.
So like, so one thing I realized is that I love the written word and I love words. Like I am a person who learns and interacts with ideas through the written word, but that is not the primary medium for a lot of people.
That's true.
And so even like physical books, I love physical books. I basically only read physical books. But realizing now as I look at my sales, more than 60% of my sales are audio and ebook. So I would not consume either of those mediums, but I would never turn those people away, right? And so you think those people are either visual learners or audio learners.
Right.
And so thinking about how you can reach those people. Like let's say in one of your books, this is the story of Alexander the Great, or this is the story of the Spartans. Obviously, the primary medium for you to deliver that was by, this book. But if you could just tell someone that story, that would also be meaningful to you, right? So I guess what I'm saying is I don't limit myself to the ideas in the books as only being books. I believe in them enough that I want to talk about them in all the different mediums that people are willing to consume them in. And ultimately, I know that comes back to books. Like when we had Jack Carr here, I remember I was talking to one of his readers out front, and they were like a trucker or something like that. And they were like, I hadn't read a book since high school, and someone told me to read one of his books, and I started listening to it in an audiobook on my drives. And they're like, now I've read everything that he's done, he's done. Plus, they'd read my stuff. They fell in love with reading because they didn't think they liked reading, but what they didn't like was physical books. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think about what is my job as a person who has something that I think is worth sharing, all the different mediums that I can do that with. Like if I give a talk to someone, like let's say a group of people, and none of them read the books, but they took the ideas that are in the books and they applied it to their life as a result of the talk, I guess, what do I really care? You know what I mean? Like the time that I spent writing the book was not wasted because I couldn't have given the talk without the book.
But I'm sort of from a different school.
Okay.
To me, it's sort of the experiences in the book, rather than if I were just talking about it, it wouldn't be the same thing. The experience is in the way the thing is laid out, the way the lines run, that kind of thing. I'm a consumer of the written word just like you.
But I mean, if you think about it like this, it's like, let's say you come up with a story and it's a book. And then that book gets adapted into a movie and then a TV show and then it's a radio thing and then it's a Broadway play. These are all shoot-offs of the same original idea. And they're the creative process, the satisfaction from you was in creating it for a book, but those other mediums are still valuable extensions of.
I agree with that.
Yeah,
it's like talking about it is another thing. That's not the same thing.
I get it.
By the way, I want to say something to you here, and thank you for when I came here 2 or 3 years ago, whenever it was, we're here. This is the camera, right? We're here at Ryan's bookstore, The Painted Porch, and he was kind enough a couple of years ago. I came here and said, "Just please explain to me what is social media, what is marketing, and stuff like that." And the stuff that you told me really made a difference. Really changed everything. Yeah, I don't know if you know how much it changed. It changed things a lot for me. Really? It really helped. Yeah.
Well, that's very cool to hear. I mean, I've been a huge fan of your stuff for a very long time, obviously, so that I could pay it back in any ways.
It helped me tremendously, yeah.
I mean, it to me, I just think about these mediums as being very powerful mechanisms for delivering the stuff that I think is really important. But at the end of the day, I always have to remind myself the driving engine is the writing of the books. And not only is the driving engine the writing of the books, that's the one I like doing the most. So if the reward for being successful at what you do is that you don't have very much time to do that thing anymore, that's not success.
Yes.
If LeBron James doesn't have time to play basketball, he's doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Especially when, there's some argument that you can only do that thing for a limited amount of time.
Yeah.
And how much time, how are you going to spend that window?
Yeah. I was reading, do you know who Dan Sullivan is? He's a kind of a mentor to.
Yes.
And I was reading he does these little books, and it was about your attention and where you put your attention, And I had never really thought about that before. And this will go, see if you agree with this. So as I'm listening to this, I'm thinking to myself, where do I put my attention, And I think that where my attention goes when I'm really doing it right, like if I'm writing a book like Gates of Fire or something like that, my attention goes to that world that is being created kind of through me, but not by me in the moment. So when I sort of liken it to, and see if you agree with this, writing a book to me is a little bit like going into a a great cavern, and you've got a little one of those miner's lights on, and there's a big thing in there. It's already there, and you're sort of exploring, almost like the painted things at Lascaux or whatever it is. And so that, to me, is where my attention is and where I want it to be. It's not in the real world.
Sure.
You know, and when obviously I live in the real world, so I have to come out of that. But like you say, if LeBron James doesn't get to play basketball, he's not LeBron James.
Yes.
And so anything that takes me away from that, and a lot of it's my fault for saying yes to things that I shouldn't say yes to, is not healthy for me, and I'm not doing what I was put here to do. On the other hand, you can obviously do that too much.
Yes.
But that was kind of an insight to me that I hadn't thought about before.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I like to think about it. It's like, what are the things that only you can do? And what are the things that if you didn't do them, someone else would do them, right? So like if you're easily replaceable in a certain task or a certain opportunity, then it's probably not the right thing for you. Like I think about this like with the team that I built out is like, if I don't write, no one will write those things. But if I don't sweat about the taxes, someone else can sweat about the taxes, right? Like what are the tasks? I have a story in the new book on Discipline is Destiny where Harry Belafonte calls Martin Luther King, and Martin Luther King is not there, and Martin Luther King's wife answers the phone, and they're trying to have this conversation, and she keeps getting interrupted. She's got to put dinner in the oven. The kids are crying over and over again. And finally, he's like, Coretta, can I ask you a question? And she's like, yes. He's like, this is going to be sensitive, but do you have any help? And she's like, what do you mean? And he's like, why don't you have like a housekeeper and a maid and an assistant and a chauffeur and blah, blah. And she's like, well, Martin would never allow that. And he's like, this ends right now. Like, I'm hiring a staff for you. And you totally get Martin Luther King's reservations. He's a minister. He's serving. It feels weird that he would be enriching himself, like spending money from the donors on these sort of personal service things. But he's like, you guys are out there leading this movement. You can't be worried about whether there's milk in the fridge or not. And so I think about like, what are the things that only you can do? Like only Martin Luther King could go to jail as Martin Luther King. Somebody else could pick his kids up from school or whatever it is, right? And so I think about that one on like the micro level, like have you built out a team around you to help you do what you do? And then secondarily, like what are things that don't need to be done at all? In Meditations, Marcus Aurelius says, ask yourself at every moment, is this task essential? And he says, if it's not essential, not only do you eliminate inessential things, but you get the double benefit of doing the essential things better. And so like how often like people, they're like, I don't have time for social, I'm an author, I'm an artist, I don't have time for social media. And then you're like, you call them and you're like, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, I'm just at the grocery store. And it's like, well, you should be doing social media and you should be using, like DoorDash to deliver your groceries or whatever.
I mean, actually, you're opening my mind a little bit here because I'm thinking like social media, there is something that only you can do. I only want to see you on the thing. I don't want to see something delegated, you know? The other thing, like in my book, The Lion's Gate, about the 67 Israeli war, that was one of the things Moshe Dayan, the great Israeli general, said, I don't want to do anything that somebody else can do. I want to do only those things that I can do and that no one can replace me. And he's absolutely right.
Yeah, Plutarch's line was, a leader has to be able to do anything, but can't do everything. So it's like, if you don't know how all this stuff works, like part of the reason I also feel like I can effectively delegate, let's say tasks on social media is like, I know how to do it and I know what I want it to look like, so I can explain how that is. But I don't think I could explain how someone could write for me. Like only really I can do that. All right, so going back to put your ass where your heart wants to be. You recommended this John Steinbeck book to me, Journal of a Novel.
Journal of a Novel, yeah.
And he had a line in there where he's talking about dawdly days. I think it's a made up word he had, but it was the same thing. The days where you're not feeling it, where it's not coming. And you talk about this in the book where you're basically like, you don't expect perfection of yourself. You just have to show up and spend the time. That's it. So talk to me about having, it's like a high bar and that I have to do it every day, but it's a low bar. It seems like you're saying that you don't have to do it well every day.
I mean, most of what we do is not so great, right?
Yeah.
It's certainly like the first time through. But what's really hard to me is sitting there and staying there, you know? Mm-hmm. And the other thing that I have found, in other words, I don't try to, and I'm sure you're the same way, I don't torture myself with, is this good? You know, as I'm writing a sentence, I'm writing a paragraph. The main thing is just to keep the ball moving. And at the end of the day, and I know at the end of the week, at the end of the month, you're going to have something. You might have to redo it. The big danger for me is falling off the wagon, is losing the momentum. That's the most important thing to me in a book, is keeping going. I'm a big believer in multiple drafts of things. I don't know how many drafts you write, but I will write 15, 16, 17 drafts. So when I'm on draft 2 or 3, I'm not torturing myself about, is this great? I'll get the words right, on the 17th crack. But my only thing each day is, am I going to sit my ass down and put in the time? And I think that applies to anything, physical fitness, anything at all.
When I think about that, it's like, if it exists, I can edit it to be good. If it does not exist, I cannot edit it.
Right, exactly. Like, there's no such thing as writing, there's only rewriting.
Yes.
You know?
Well, and there, do you like that rule? It's like a couple crappy pages a day. Have you heard this?
I do like that. Yeah. Like, or there's another thing that somebody told me. It was like, start a sentence with, and the bad version, maybe you even told me this, and the bad version is, and then you start writing it. And sure enough, the bad version becomes the good version after about 10 times.
I've talked about this. One of the things that I do is, so I have like a research assistant that helps me, and obviously editors also. So like, as I'm writing a sentence, I might go like, I don't even sometimes complete the sentence. Like I'll like let's say I was talking about you talk about Moshe Dayan. So let's say I knew something about him, and I'd be like, Moshe Dayan in the midst of and I'm like, wait, is the war in 65? I would just say insert blah blah blah, and I fill in the details later.
Yes.
So I don't even want to lose the momentum of like stopping to get the facts right, because the facts can always be corrected, but the gist of the sentence or the momentum of what you're trying to put down is more important than like getting it perfect.
Yes, you're exactly right, in my opinion. It's the magic of TK, to come. But the other thing, in all sort of seriousness, and I'm just thinking about this as we're talking about it, when I'm working on a scene or something, there's always a level of fear that you're going into, right? And that makes you want to stay on the surface and not sort of really, imagine yourself into that moment or push whatever's going to happen in the moment. And so that's why I agree with you, Ryan, that if you noodle around too much with, is this the right word? That's an excuse to give in to that fear. Much better to write some shitty sentence that does go into this, that shines that light on the dark spot, because you can always come back to it.
Yes.
And it's crazy, to talk about fear in writing, but I think it's huge. It's a big, big part of it. And I think overcoming that fear is everything.
Very few people would, and maybe that's what's so insidious about it, very few people would characterize their perfectionism or wanting to get it right as being based in fear, because they're like, no, I just care so much. But that's actually what it is. It's the surface is more comfortable. So if you get bogged down, you're comfortable.
True. I would say it's a form of resistance. It's the diabolical voice of resistance telling you, oh, get that sentence right, man, get it right. And what it's trying to do is to keep you from getting deep.
That's right. Yeah,
we're talking about writing here. This is interesting.
Well, there's a Bible verse that I heard recently. I'm butchering it, but it was something about how when you're plowing a field, if you look back to see the field that you've plowed, you're not fit for the kingdom of God. This is the
Oh, really? I like that.
And I was trying to think about what that means, and then I think what it is that if you're plowing, so your horse is pulling the plow, you're standing behind it. If you stop to look back to see if it's straight, right? You'll lose. It will curve in the future. So the paradox there is by inspecting or feeling proud of, or trying to fine tune what you just did. You not only is it already done, so it doesn't matter. But you are actually costing now the horse is veering to the left or right because you've taken your attention off the task in front of you, which is the most important thing.
Yeah, it's great. I agree. Plutarch probably said that.
No, this is in the Bible.
It's in the Bible.
But the idea that you just show up, do the thing, don't sweat it too much. It's weird. It's almost like also though by saying I'm just going to stay on the surface, I'm just going to do it. You're actually giving yourself the freedom to go into it deep, because it's like when you're too conscious about what you're trying to do, you almost block yourself from doing it.
Yes, and I would say when I'm not trying to say stay on the surface and not worry about. I'm saying go deep, but just don't worry about getting every comma right.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, Churchill said the other way to spell perfection is paralysis.
Yeah. That was in your book about discipline.
I think so. Yes. So,
which is a great book, by the way.
Thank you. So here's an interesting thing. So I was thinking about this too, though. So I wasn't feeling good, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to force myself to do it. There is this part of me also that feels like sometimes I rush things. So instead of being like, you have time, take it day by day, pace yourself. How do you think about the difference between like, I got to do it every day, no exceptions, and also pacing yourself, load management? You're in this for the long haul.
I'm definitely a load management kind of a guy. I mean, because any kind of a book is like a year, 2 years, 3 years or something like that. And you'll drive yourself insane if you put too much of a deadline. And for me, I've always been a spec writer. I haven't really done things on deadlines for publishers or anything like that. So I just say, it's going to take 2 years. It's going to take 3 years. Take your time and do it,
Right, and 3 years is a lot of days, and not
it's
all those days have to be.
There's a lot of power in those days,
Yeah, I was thinking about this. I was both my kids refuse to nap in their beds. They only nap in the car.
Really?
And so you're like, okay, I got an hour. Like I need to drive them around for an hour, right, while they sleep. And then I found myself driving fast. And I was like, but I don't have anywhere to go, right? Like, why am I, I was driving, my son was asleep. So put aside the safety issue of it, which is also real. But I'm driving and I'm getting frustrated that the person in front of me is driving below the speed limit. And I had to catch myself and go, but I don't have anywhere to be. Literally the whole purpose of what I'm doing is to kill 1 hour of time. And here I am trying to get that 1 hour done fastest. And so I kind of think about that with writing too, where it's like, why am I, I gave myself a year on this. Why am I wondering if I'm behind schedule? Or even the 1 year is just a made up estimate. It takes what it takes, right? Yeah. And when you get to the end, then you're at the end. But there is, if you're, I think, driven or ambitious or a pro, there's this part of you that wants to just do it. And that there's a tension there because rushing almost never produces good work.
No, it doesn't. And I'm going to ask you a whole other question. Where do you see yourself 10 years from now? You've been on a kind of a roll here, following a certain course. Have you thought about that?
No, I'd like to I'd like to be doing the exact same thing 10 years from now. If you'd asked me 10 years, my first book came out exactly 10 years ago this month. And so if you said 10 years in the future, I'm still with my wife, I'm still writing books, I'd be like, that's the dream. There's not this isn't like a means to an end. So to go to the point about
so there's basketball, no need to rush then.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I want it, and it may actually be the opposite. There's a significant reason to pace yourself and think about, hey, if you burn yourself out, you won't be able to do this in 10 years. So I kind of think about it like that.
Diana and I took a driving trip I don't know, when was it, like a year ago or less than a year ago, to some of the places that I used to work in North Carolina and Kentucky and places like that for a book, because I wanted to see, remember where things were. And of course, everything was gone. Every building was gone, everything was gone. And it made me think, this is on the subject of going slow rather than racing, how I wish I had paid attention more to what I was doing and what was happening at the time. And this is even a sidebar. This was the era. I've never been a photograph taking person, and this was before iPhones and stuff like that. So I have these periods of my life that were like really important to me, and I don't have a photo of anything. I don't have a picture of any of the people that I knew. I don't have a picture, and I also, I have them here, but not as much as I wish I had them, And I don't know whether it's apropos of anything.
No,
it's just taken, I look around here. You can't really see, you guys can't see what's out here. It's a wonderful little alley with a bunch of little stores that are kind of funky old buildings and cabins. And, I'm trying to sort of take this in, and what we're doing here too,
Well, there's this Stoic practice that Marcus Aurelius gets from Epictetus. He says, as you tuck your child in at night, you should say to yourself, like, they will not make it to the morning. And so there's a haunted tragicness to that, in that Marcus Aurelius loses like 6 children before they become adulthood. You imagine just how terrible that would be. But I don't think that's actually what the exercise was about. I think what he was saying is, if that is true, you would not rush through the evening. Yeah. Right? Like, so why are you trying to get this over with? And I think about that with books too. Like, I like doing this. This is meaningful to me. I like being in this world. This is the dream. What's going to happen when I finish this one? I'm just going to start another one. So why am I rushing through this or anything? Because I guess the Stoics would say, when you're rushing, where are you rushing towards? Death.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
Like you're rushing away from now towards a thing that, yes, towards the next thing. But what's after the next thing? What's after the... There's only one thing after the next thing. So you might as well slow down and be here for the thing while you're in it, whatever that thing is, even if that thing is washing the dishes or stuck at the airport. I mean, I have to do that reminder or I won't do that. Yeah. Right?
Do you journal in the evenings? I know you're a big journaler in the morning, like when you put your kids to bed. Do you take a moment and review the day?
When I do my journaling, I'm usually reviewing the last day in the morning. So I'm thinking about... I see. I sometimes I'll do both, but oftentimes I just don't have the time to do 2 different sets of the thing. But yeah, I think taking a minute, like I have one journal where I just write one thing a day that I'm grateful for. So that's kind of a moment. But yeah, I'm usually a good chunk of the journaling I'm doing is about reflecting on the day past. I have this other journal I do that's 1 line a day. And I just write 1 line about, I usually am doing the day before. So what I love about that is, and it's I have it in the bookstore, I'll show it to you, but it's 5 lines on each page. And
I was going to ask you, how do you keep this? Do you have like notebooks and?
Well, it's called the 1 line a day journal, and each page has 5 slots on it. So you keep this journal for 5 years. And so what I love about, like, this is in early June, I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, this is when I started stillness on this day. 2 days later, 1 year later, I started Lives of the... I realized I was sort of almost unconsciously on a schedule of starting a book on this date 5 years in a row. Wow. And what I really like about it is, obviously, like, those cool anniversaries are helpful, but like, it'll be like, oh, like on this day, 2 years ago, I was in the middle of this chapter of this book and I was having a hard time. And now I don't even think about that. And I'm very proud of that chapter. Just realizing that, like, you were, whatever this point was, you've been at this point before. It just sort of is what it is. And you at the end of with enough time, it just becomes a little entry in the journal.
That was a great part in your book, Discipline is Destiny, your new book that's coming out. At the very end, Ryan kind of takes apart takes a chapter or an epilogue to kind of describe his own feelings as he's writing the book. And it was really hard. And you were in a state of despair, as you
Yes.
say. And I know, like, same thing for me. Like, I don't journal, but I should.
But you do the blog. I feel like you're publicly journaling about what you're struggling with.
But I
on
don't
Writing
really,
Wednesdays.
like, when I look back to, book 4, book 5, book 6, I know there were periods that were really, really, really hard. And when I'm struggling in something now, I wish I could sort of flash back to that and sort of that earlier person could say, relax a little. It's always like this, this isn't the first time you're doing this thing.
Well, as I was writing in that afterward, I was like, I think I'm going to have to ask for an extension. And like that seemed like such a huge thing. And in retrospect, why do I like, if you need an extension,
but everybody
you need
seems to go through that. Yeah.
Like it is what it is, And so I think part of the irony of discipline or the daily practice that you're talking about is that it can also become a compulsion, right? And it's not always the healthiest.
Yeah.
Like someone's like, hey, can you come? Like, I really need your help on this thing. And you're like, no, I have to do my daily practice. And like 6 months later, you're like, I should just help that person. What did I need? Like, I could have skipped the thing for one. You have to be careful, I think, too, that the ritual doesn't become like OCD or something.
Although I'm the other school, I look back and I say, why did I help that person? Did they really get anything out of it? Did they really do anything? And meanwhile, I'm screwing myself up.
Although I read this book about Tom Brady called Better to Be Feared. And they were saying that, like, I couldn't understand why he left the New England Patriots to go to Tampa Bay. And like, because you're on the best team in the history of sports with the best coach in the history of sports. And one of the arguments that the author, I think it's Seth Wickersham from ESPN, and he was saying that basically Tom Brady's wife was like, this is Giselle, she was like, you can keep playing football as long as you want, but it should not be so painful. Like, it shouldn't be so torturous every day to do this thing. And he was like, I want to go to a city where the weather isn't terrible. I want to be a slightly less ruthless environment. I want it to be more, And so part of his decision to go there, it was to play it in a slightly more balanced, sustainable environment, which is that's different than Kevin Durant leaving the Warriors to go to Brooklyn, right? This is I think this is making a big change for better reasons.
And you're analogizing that
I just related
your
to
own work.
like, it doesn't have to be awful. Like the discipline and the practice of it should not make you miserable. And if
Sometimes
it does,
I like the awfulness of it.
No, I think it should be part of it. But I guess the point is, if you've been doing it for 25 years and you hate every day of it, is that really winning? Is it winning if, to be good at the thing, you give up happiness?
Did Tom Brady really hate it? I think this must be the same for you. For me, it's a discipline. I have to overcome my own resistance. So that's hard.
Yeah.
Just like if you were running or training at the gym or whatever it is. But it's a joy to do once you're in the cold pool and you're doing it.
But I guess his point was, it could be a joy and pleasant at the same time. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't.
If it's cold weather versus warm weather.
I'm sure football is a grueling sport. So I'm sure playing for Tampa is not like, it's not fake, right?
Yeah.
There's still a grind to it. I think his point was like, if you're, and I've talked to other athletes about this too, like they all look back on their career, they go like, I do wish I had more fun while I was doing it, because they were taking it so seriously that they were sucking the joy out of the day-to-dayness of it, which is, to me, the same thing. Like, if you're doing that, you're probably doing something wrong.
Yeah, it's like what I was saying about not paying attention in earlier years, because I was so concerned with, doing a job or getting something done or whatever. But if you're not doing that.
At this point in your career, how often do you think about or even know like your sales numbers?
I haven't even figured out how to do it yet.
Like, so that's probably a good place to be, right? Like you write what you want to write, you do what you want to do, and you don't think about how it's doing.
Yeah, I don't. It's like Butch Cassidy said, as long as what did he say? As long as we break even or whatever,
Yes.
I really just my goal is just to be able to keep doing it, That, like the movie we were talking about, Save the Tiger, where they asked him, what does he want? And he said, another season. Yeah. That's what I want, is another season.
Yeah. I remember I was talking to Casey Neistat, the YouTuber, once, and he said something like, the point of making money is to use it to make more work.
Yeah.
Like he's like, because if you were really just after money, you would work in an ad agency or something. He was saying the point of making the money is to be able to fund the projects that you want to be able to make.
Yeah.
So that obviously you have to have some level of success or you can't do it anymore. But I do think as I've done more books, like I also, like, people ask me how many books I've written and I have to think about it, which I also really like. Like I had this thing where, like, if you don't forget what day it is, you don't like your job anymore. Like if you lose track of what day it is, that's a good sign that you're doing something closer to what you should be doing. Same with the pandemic, where like time you've lost. The
only way I know is going to the gym and be looking to Sunday when I don't have to go.
Yes. But yeah, as I've done more, like I care less about how it does. One, I think because I have a longer time span. Like I've seen books that didn't do good at first, do good later. I also understand that I'm measuring over a longer period of time. So it really doesn't matter how it does in year one. What matters is, do you have 7 years of pretty good years? That adds up to a large number. And also, I think you get to a point too where, like, if you've proven that you can do it, it doesn't mean that much to you to do it again. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Do you ever worry that you're losing a step, or that do you consider I'm just getting better and better and better?
I mean, I guess you assume you're always getting better at it, but you don't know. And it is helpful if people are like, no, this is like really good. That's nice. But
it's getting to the next level. Get there. Yeah.
I do envy people in sports because they have such a clearer sense of winning or losing, or whether they're getting faster or...
Yeah, they have numbers, right? That can be measured. Yeah.
Yes. And I feel like when writers try to apply numbers, they're almost always... the numbers in writing, people are like, I do 1,000 words a day. It's like, this is made up. I feel like the numbers in almost every other profession are counterproductive.
Yeah. It's like actors say, the actors should not be competing against each other in the Academy Awards, because how can you compare one performance to another? They're both great if they're at that level.
I like how comedians just think about it in terms of stage time. Like, how many nights are you getting? How many nights a week are you getting up? Or how many times a night are you getting up? They're just thinking about it in terms of doing it. And I guess the assumption is that the more you do it, the better you get at it, which I think is true. I guess sometimes I'm wondering if I'm not holding something back, but your point about surface level is true. It's like, how do you know? Like, I think as I've gotten better at what I do, I've discovered ways where you can kind of cheat, right? Like where you can, it's a form or and like, do you ever think about that? Like, am I really pushing myself? Am I really breaking new ground? Or am I just doing the same thing over and over again?
Yeah, I do think about that. And sometimes I blame myself, and I do that,
Yeah.
But
I think most of even if you are doing that, sometimes that's a way to get to the headspace or the moment where suddenly you break through and you do something better.
Another thing I've been thinking about lately is the difference between hour 1 and hour 3 when you're working on something, because lately I haven't been able to do like a 4-hour day or something like that. And when you get into that 4th hour, when you really are getting deep into something, you've been into it so far in your head that stuff appears in the 4th hour that doesn't appear in hour 1. And I haven't been in that fourth hour in a while.
I tend to do it like, so I'll do like 2 or 3 hours. That's like a good day for me in the mornings. I'll do that. And then it'll be like, I'll be on a bike ride or a run in the afternoon, like several hours later. And then something will click and that I'll write it down on a note card or whatever. And that will be the thing that goes in there. And I just think about how much of my books are those sentences or this is the perfect way to tie these two things together. And that really, so if I don't do the surface level 3 hours in the morning, I'm not setting myself up for the eureka moment in the bath later. And really, it's the eureka moment in the bath that's everything, but you can't have one without the other.
True. Yeah, it's the work that sets up that moment. Yeah.
There's a story that I was reading. I think I'm going to try to use it in the book that I'm doing now because I'm doing this book on justice. There's a rabbi. He wrote that book, When Good Things Happen to Bad People.
I know the book, but
and he was saying that as he sits, because I was thinking about you putting your ass where your heart wants to be, but also the prayer you say to the muses each morning. So he doesn't do that, but every morning when he sits down to write, and I guess he's not a full-time writer, so maybe he doesn't do it every day, so it makes more financial sense. But the point is, every day when he sits down to write, before he writes a word, he gets out his checkbook and he writes a small check to a charity. Like
really?
He picks a different charity each time. And the point is, he's making a donation or an offering, he's saying, to the muses or to God or to the person that he wants to be. And that this is setting the tone for the writing day.
That's really interesting.
And I think I want to start doing that. But it reminded me of how you think about it.
Yeah, I don't write a check, but but I definitely believe that you need a moment of putting your ego aside, like Mr. Rogers or whoever his word to hang his little cardigan on the hook, when he goes in there. And
he sings the song, he changes his shoes.
Yeah, that I'm at the service of something else. My ego is not a part of this thing. And, help me,
I talked about this in Stillness, I think, at Mr. Rogers, that to me, the operative part of the opening of that thing is the first thing that you see is it shows the house, it zooms in, and then it's the flashing yellow light of the trolley car, which a person who knew him was saying that he was saying like, slow down, like caution, slow down. And so I think that to me, that's what that offering is, or that headspace is. The ritual of it is like, I'm entering a special place, I'm slowing down, I'm leaving behind what I would normally, I'm changing into my work clothes or whatever the thing is. Then I'm going into the mind. But I do think the if you think about like before battle, the Spartans or whomever, they're sacrificing the goat or the chicken or whatever. It's the offering to the gods, right? It's like it's a sign of obeisance or submission. It's a gift because you're wanting something in return. That's what the prayer is about.
And it's also this is really interesting. I love to think about this, and I can't even. They're also, when they're sacrificing, they're really saying, "Is this an auspicious time for us to go out there and risk our lives?"
Yeah.
And so they're definitely a believer that there's another dimension out there. Like, I'll tell you a long story. We've got time here.
Yeah.
I was in Africa, and we went to visit the Maasai out in this place where you had to like fly in a helicopter to get there because there was no roads. This story takes a few minutes, so bear with me. And when we got there, it was the middle of the day, and it was a camp, and there were the cattle and all the women and everything like this. And the shaman had just done something, and he said, we got to move the camp. And sure enough, like in order to move the camp, they first had to collect all the cattle, and they had to get the white cattle first. And like, they weren't all in one place. It was like this family had one, so it was a production, and everybody had to break down their tents. And they all did it in a very good spirit. Nobody was bitching, I got it. And when they finally moved, they only moved like 300 feet up and I thought, at the time, you accept it completely. But then I thought to myself, what did the shaman see? What was happening? I wished I could have talked to the guy then. What was bad there that was okay 300 feet away? So when the Spartans are taking the omens, it's the same sort of thing. And I think in a lot of ways, the artist's life is about that dimension, that world that we don't see, you know, that the shaman saw. And the tricks of like taking the omens and the entrails of a pigeon or whatever, why does that tell you what, you know? But I swear to God, there's something there, you know, even though we laugh at it now, oh, isn't it quaint that they, you know, but there's something there. Like the Spartan army, in fact, I know you know this, what a march out must take in terms of getting everything together, the equipment, the armor, the mental, saying goodbye to the family. They'd go to the border of Lacedaemon, take the omens, and if they were bad, they turn around and went back. So, you know, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's, I mean, Elizabeth Gilbert calls it like the big magic or whatever. Uh-huh. If you accept it, once you sort of humble yourself by going, this isn't me, there's something happening here, then the other stuff doesn't feel so silly anymore.
Yeah.
Because you're like, it already is something weird about it. Yeah. Why is like
writing that check is not a dumb thing, you know? It's magic.
Yeah. So I think it's in the artist journey. You have like, you take like Bruce Springsteen and you're like, here's all Bruce Springsteen's albums. Uh-huh. He's like, clearly you're like, he's going through something. You like list the catalog of the artist's work. So if you were to list the catalog of your work, what do you think it is that you're working at? Like if you can do that in your head, when you look at all the books, and it's kind of a magical thing to be able to look at the body of work that way. What strikes you about what you've done? Have you done that?
That's a great question. I have done it, but not as deeply as I should. But there definitely is a theme there, and the theme I think is that it's a Marcus Aurelius theme. Life is a battle and a journey far from home. You know.
Yeah.
And that whether it's the internal battle or an external battle, I think that's sort of what I'm exploring. And if I can say something, I was thinking after I read your book last night, Discipline is Destiny, there was something that I wanted to say. It's another long thing. Okay. Can I go over your long thing here?
We got time.
It's like, what's the purpose of discipline? Like, you and I are very disciplined guys. If anybody watched us get up in the morning, they would say, wow, I wish I could do that. But they also might say they're crazy to be, lashing themselves like they are. But, okay, here's my long version of it. I believe that life operates on two levels. I know this is my, and the higher level is the muse level, the level we were just talking about that the shaman saw.
Sure.
The level of your calling, of your work, whatever that is. And the lower level is our material plane.
Yeah.
And on that lower level is the force that I call resistance with a capital R, that's there to stop us from reaching this higher level, right? And if we don't reach this level, or we don't do our work, we don't follow our calling, then we get sick and we do bad things and shit happens, right? So what is the purpose of discipline? Discipline is what takes you to that higher level.
That's right.
That's why you have to have it. You can't wish your way there. You can't chant your way there. You can't, whatever was that book, The Secret, you can't vibe your way there. Yeah, you can't. The law of attraction is not going to get, it's bullshit.
Yeah.
The only way you get there is through hard work,
right.
Because the beings that inhabit this higher level that we want to associate with, that's the only thing they respect. You've got to punch your ticket and pay the price. So discipline is not a bad thing. You're not crazy to work to be self-disciplined, because that's what gets you to this higher level, and also gets you to just live your life so that when the day is over, you're calm. Yes. You're not freaking out as some of us have in the past.
That's beautiful. I love it. Well, Stephen, thank you very much.
So that's why everybody buy. Discipline is Destiny.
And likewise, the new book, Put Your Ass Where Your Heart Wants to Be, is incredible. As always, this is my copy of The War of Art, Turning Pro, The Artist's Journey, Gates of Fire. I've loved all your stuff, and thank you so much.
Thank you for everything you've done for me. You don't even know the things that you've done for me.
Likewise.
And thank you for, while we're talking, for giving me off of your book, The Daily Stoic, the idea of me doing a book.
Oh yeah, when is that coming out?
It was all involved in all of the it's coming next year at the earliest.
Amazing.
But thank you for that, even though we haven't. It's done.
That was very much a selfish suggestion, so I could read it.
Okay. Well, I hope you like it when it finally comes out.